When we think about World War II, we think of bullets, bombs, and massive armies. But what if I told you that one of the most effective units in the US Army waged war with creativity? It sounds crazy, right? Well, this is the story of the Ghost Army, a super-secret group of artists, actors, and engineers who used illusion as their main weapon. So let's dive in and see just how they pulled it off.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1944, just after D-Day. Two Frenchmen are riding their bikes near the front lines, and they see something that just completely blows their minds. It's so weird, so impossible, that one of them just turns to his friend and says, "The Americans, they're very strong." So what on earth did they see?
This. They saw 4 American GIs just casually pick up what looked like a 40-ton Sherman tank. I mean, can you imagine? The French guys were absolutely stunned. But of course, it wasn't a real tank. It was basically a giant balloon, a 93-pound rubber decoy. And believe me, this incredible trick was just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that one moment really sums up everything this unit was about. And it leads us to the big question we're going to tackle here. How in the world did an army of artists and tricksters manage to bamboozle the entire German military with nothing but rubber tanks and sound effects?
All right, to figure that out, we've got to meet the magicians behind the curtain. Their official name was the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, which is a bit of a mouthful. But history gave them a much, much cooler name, the Ghost Army.
And you'd think a unit like this would be huge, right? Nope, it was tiny, just 1,100 men. But their job? It was massive. Their whole mission was to impersonate entire US Army divisions. We're talking pretending to be up to 30,000 soldiers, all to draw the enemy away from where the real fighting was happening.
So who were these guys? Well, they definitely weren't your standard issue soldiers. The Army actually went out and recruited them from art schools, ad agencies, places like that. I mean, you've got future famous fashion designer Bill Blass and the artist Ellsworth Kelly in this unit. And get this, the average IQ was supposedly 119, one of the highest in the entire Army. Pretty wild, huh?
And the whole idea for this crazy unit came from a real odd couple. On one hand, you had Major Ralph Ingersoll, a famous journalist, a real wild idea, pie-in-the-sky kind of guy. And on the other, you had Colonel Billy Harris, a straight-laced West Point grad. He was the feet on the ground, okay, how do we actually make this work guy. Together, they made it happen.
So how exactly do you create an army out of thin air? Well, the unit itself called it a traveling roadshow of deception, which I think is just perfect. And like any good show, it needed the right props and some serious technical magic.
Their whole strategy was basically a 3-part multimedia deception. They were going to fool the enemy with what they could see, what they could hear, and even what they could pick up on the radio.
Okay, first up, visual deception. This is probably what the Ghost Army is most famous for. You had this whole battalion of artists in charge of hundreds of inflatable rubber tanks, trucks, artillery, even planes. And here's the brilliant part. They would set everything up and then camouflage it just badly enough that enemy spy planes would be sure to spot them. So clever.
All right, next up was the sound, and this is just incredible. The Sonic team had this huge library of sound effects they recorded, and I'm not just talking about big stuff like tanks rolling by. They had the little details down too, like the sound of sergeants yelling at privates. Then they'd blast these sounds from these enormous 500-pound speakers you can hear from 15 miles away. To the Germans, it sounded like a whole army was on the move.
And the final piece of the puzzle, radio deception, which they called spoof radio. And honestly, this was just pure genius. Their radio operators were so good they could actually mimic the unique Morse code sending style of another operator. It was called their fist, kind of like a signature. So they'd set up these totally phony radio networks, and the Germans listening in had no idea the real army unit was already long gone.
So with all these tricks up their sleeves, the Ghost Army put on more than 20 different shows all across Europe. They helped Patton in France, they were there during the Battle of the Bulge, but their last performance, that was their masterpiece.
Okay, so it's March 1945. The Allies need to cross the Rhine River, a huge strategic move. So they send in the Ghost Army to create a massive diversion. It was called Operation Weyersen, and they pulled out all the stops. We're talking 600 inflatable tanks, sound effects blasting 24/7. They even had soldiers wearing fake uniform patches wander into local towns to spread rumors, hoping enemy spies would pick them up.
And just to give you a sense of how big this bluff was, it all started with just 1,100 men.
Who were pretending to be 2 entire divisions.
That's around 30,000 soldiers.
And the craziest part? The Germans totally bought it. They moved their troops to fight a phantom army, which let the real Ninth Army cross the river with almost no trouble. It's estimated that this one single deception saved somewhere between 15,000 and 30,000 Allied lives. Just incredible.
So after the war, you'd think these guys would be celebrated as heroes, right? Parades, medals, the whole shebang. But nope, their story was immediately classified as top secret. The curtain came down, and for decades, silence. Nobody knew what they'd done.
These soldiers were sworn to secrecy. They couldn't tell a soul, not even their own families. The story only started to leak out in a magazine article in 1985, and the official files weren't declassified until 1996. And it took all the way until 2024 for them to finally get the recognition they deserved.
And on March 21st, 2024, the very few surviving members of the Ghost Army, including these two 100-year-old veterans, Bernard Bluestein and Seymour Nussenbaum, finally accepted the Congressional Gold Medal for the entire unit.
This medal is for their unique and highly distinguished service. It's really this solid, tangible symbol of a nation's gratitude for a unit that fought a war unlike any other, a war of wits and creativity that saved thousands of lives.
You know, there's a quote from a US Army analyst written way back when this was all still a secret that just sums it up perfectly. They said, "Rarely, if ever, has there been a group of such a few men which had so great an influence on the outcome of a major military campaign." The Ghost Army really proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon you have isn't a gun or a tank. It's a really, really good story.